in this family hates me.
Then maybe you should ask Santa for a new family.
I don't want a new family. I don't want any family. Families suck.
Just stay up there. I don't want to see you again for the rest of the night.
I don't want to see you again for the rest of my whole life. And I don't want to see anybody else either.
I hope you don't mean that.
Macaulay Culkin. Say that name, and for a lot of people, one image instantly pops up. A small blonde kid, hands on his cheeks, mouth wide open, the face of Christmas itself. In the early 90s, Macaulay Culkin wasn't just a child actor. He was the child actor, the kind every kid recognized, every parent trusted, and every studio wanted on their poster. After Home Alone 2, Lost in New York dropped in 1992, Culkin's fame didn't slow down. It exploded. At that point, he wasn't riding the wave of success. He was the wave. You couldn't walk into a video store, flip through a magazine, or turn on the TV without seeing his face. He had gone from cute kid in a Christmas movie to a full-blown pop culture phenomenon. Then came The Good Son in 1993, and this was a shock to everyone. The sweet, lovable Kevin McAllister suddenly wasn't sweet anymore. Culkin played dark, cold, an unsettling character.
Hey, Mark. Don't fuck with me.
Proving he wasn't just adorable, he could act. And that mattered. Hollywood took notice. This wasn't a one-trick child star. This was range. A year later, Richie Rich arrived, and just like that, Culkin was back to being the kid everyone adored, the richest child in the world, living in a mansion, flying jets, and still somehow staying relatable.
Put your money where your mouth is.
You mean bet?
Yeah.
5 says she put you away.
5? How about 10?
Okay, seems a little steep, but 10,000 it is.
No. Not 10,000. $10.
Oh, $10. Okay.
It sealed his status. At this point, he wasn't just famous, he was untouchable. Studios were offering him massive paychecks, and he became one of the highest-paid child actors in history. And here's the wild part, he was still just a kid. By the mid-1990s, Macaulay Culkin wasn't merely acting in movies, he was defining childhood for an entire generation. Loved by audiences, trusted by parents, and marketed everywhere, he had something rare, universal approval, no controversy, no backlash, just fame, success, and endless opportunity. From the outside, it looked like the dream, and for a moment, it really was, and then he was gone. Right when Hollywood expected Macaulay Culkin to grow from child superstar into the next big teen icon, he stepped off the stage entirely. One day he was everywhere, and then almost suddenly he wasn't. As the late 90s rolled in, Culkin quietly walked away from the industry that had built him. At first, people noticed. There were questions, headlines, curiosity. How does the most famous child actor in the world just disappear? But Hollywood moves fast, and audiences move even faster. New faces arrived. New child stars took his place. And little by little, the noise around Macaulay Culkin faded. Behind the scenes, the reason was simple and very human. Years later, Culkin would explain that he wanted something most people take for granted: a normal life, school without cameras, friends who didn't see him as a character, days that weren't controlled by contracts, box office expectations, or public image. He had been working almost nonstop since early childhood, and as a teenager, he finally had the awareness to ask himself whether he wanted that life to continue. So he chose to stop, not because the offers dried up, not because the fame disappeared, but because he wanted to grow up away from it. And while that decision protected him personally, it had an unintended effect publicly. Out of sight slowly became out of mind. As the years passed, his absence turned into silence. The questions stopped. The posters came down. The kid who once defined Christmas movies and early 90s childhood slowly slipped into pop culture memory, mentioned only in reruns and holiday marathons. For a new generation, his name became something their parents recognized, not them. Rumors filled the gap where facts used to be. Speculation replaced updates. And eventually, people stopped asking what he was doing because they assumed he was gone for good. Which brings us to the real question. After stepping away from fame, after the world moved on, after the most recognizable child star of the 1990s vanished from the spotlight, where is Macaulay Culkin now? Well, after vanishing from the spotlight for a few years, people started wondering if Macaulay Culkin had just disappeared for good. Maybe he retired. Maybe he was off somewhere living like a mysterious recluse. Whatever the case, by the late 90s, he started popping back into the public eye, and honestly, it wasn't a smooth return. In 1998, he shocked everyone by marrying Rachel Miner. And of course, the media went wild. Headlines everywhere, paparazzi snapping photos at red carpets, everyone speculating it was contractual marriage designed to bring Culkin back to limelight, a rumor that became hard refute since the marriage lasted only just 2 years. At the time, the divorce felt like a huge scandal, with several allegations and rumors flying around. Not long after, Culkin opened another relationship chapter, Mila Kunis. In 2002, Macaulay and Mila started dating, and they were inseparable, at least as far as the cameras were concerned. Every casual dinner, every party appearance, every little smile or frown got blown up in the tabloids. For most of their relationship, the media and public constantly put them under microscope. The gossip started to feel like fact, and suddenly the cute kid everyone loved was being rewritten as a cautionary tale. And then 2004 hit, and that was the year the press had a field day. Culkin got arrested in Oklahoma for marijuana and controlled substance possession. The photos from outside the courthouse were everywhere. Messy hair, tired eyes, rumpled clothes. Rumors ran wild, with outlets claiming he was addicted to drugs, spiraling out of control, falling from grace. Blurry paparazzi shots became evidence of a downfall. It was sensational and honestly pretty brutal. Truth, he pled guilty to lesser charges, handled it legally, and moved on. But by then, public perception had shifted. For the first time in years, Macaulay wasn't being talked about as the talented kid star everyone loved. Now he was the troubled former child actor, the cautionary tale that Hollywood loves to repeat. By the mid-2000s, Macaulay Culkin had been out of the Hollywood spotlight for a while, and honestly, most people probably assumed he was done. But the truth is, he was quietly reinventing himself, just in a way nobody really expected. He wasn't chasing box office hits or paparazzi attention. Instead, he was doing stuff that he found interesting, stuff that let him experiment and stay creative on his own terms. Take 2006, for example. Culkin published a semi-autobiographical novel called Junior. And yes, it was weird, quirky, and kind of dark, not exactly a heartwarming family story like Home Alone, but that was the point. It wasn't about pandering to fans or cashing in on nostalgia. It was Macaulay putting something personal out there, sharing his own perspective, and saying, "This is me and I'm doing my own thing." It was the first real sign that he was carving out a different path, one that didn't involve red carpets or endless interviews. At the same time, he started dipping back into acting, but on his own terms. Forget big studio films or blockbuster franchises. He took on smaller, unconventional roles and voice work, stuff that let him experiment without the pressure of constant public scrutiny. You might have caught him lending his voice to an animated series or showing up in indie projects that most people didn't even notice. And that was exactly how he wanted it, a low-key creative life where the work mattered more than the spotlight. But just when Macaulay started finding himself creative, another rough wave of attention hits him. In early 2011, Culkin and Mila ended their relationship, which came with much more public scrutiny. The breakup led to more public scrutiny for Culkin. Most start to wonder if this was due to Culkin's quote-unquote drug use. At first, it was reported that the breakup was amicable, but later Kunis will reveal that it was a messy breakup and that it wasn't Culkin's fault, but hers. But it was a little too late because most have created their narrative and ran with it. The rumors didn't stop, and the public, who had kind of forgotten him during his hiatus, suddenly couldn't look away. The golden child who had once defined an era of Christmas movies was now just another celebrity story to chew on. Then, just when people thought he might be completely content staying quiet, he did something totally unexpected. He fronted a parody band called the Pizza Underground from 2013 to 2016. Yeah, you heard that right, a pizza-themed band that covered Velvet Underground songs, swapping in cheesy lyrics about slices, toppings, and late-night pizza cravings. It was absurd, hilarious, and perfect. And it wasn't just a gimmick, it was a statement. Macaulay was saying, I can still perform, I can still be creative, but I'm not doing it your way, I'm doing it mine. The band became this cult favorite, attracting fans who loved the irony and the fact that Culkin didn't take himself too seriously. That whole period, writing a semi-autobiographical novel, doing indie roles, starting a pizza parody band, showed a very different side of him. Gone was the kid obsessed with fame or trying to live up to the world's expectations. In his place was someone exploring creativity, humor, and personal expression. He was still the same Macaulay Culkin who had won hearts in the early 90s, but now he was a little older, a little wiser, and a lot more willing to do things just for himself. And the beauty of it all, you didn't see him plastered across every magazine. He didn't need the headlines. He was quietly experimenting, quietly living, quietly making art that only he and the people who paid attention got to enjoy. It was a reinvention, ironic, playful, and completely on his terms. By the late 2010s, Macaulay Culkin wasn't exactly back on anyone's radar in a big way, but he was still finding ways to stay relevant on his own terms. And honestly, the stuff he was doing wasn't what anyone would have called mainstream. It was weird. It was niche, and it made it clear that Culkin wasn't interested in the old Hollywood game anymore. Around 2018, he launched Bunny Ears, a satirical pop culture site and podcast.
Hi, I'm Macaulay Culkin. Welcome to Bunny Ears. This is my comedy brand.
If you weren't paying attention, you probably missed it. But for the people who did, it was pure Culkin, irreverent, sarcastic, and a little weird. He wasn't just reviewing movies or talking about music, he was lampooning celebrity culture, trolling Hollywood absurdities, and basically pointing out how ridiculous fame can be. This wasn't a step toward a comeback. It was more like a public shrug, a way of saying, I can still play in this world, but I'm not going to play by your rules. Reinforcing that he had zero interest in traditional stardom. You wouldn't see him popping up in major films or chasing awards. Instead, he'd take odd acting gigs or voice roles, small projects, sometimes experimental. It wasn't about the paycheck or the exposure. It was about doing stuff that intrigued him, often offbeat stuff that would make fans scratch their heads and think, wait, Macaulay Culkin is doing that? And let's not forget that public image. By now, most people had either forgotten him or were still stuck on the troubled kid headlines from the early 2000s. He didn't bother trying to fix that. He didn't do interviews to rehabilitate his image. He just kept doing his own thing, a little cynical, a little sardonic, and definitely not trying to be liked. If anything, this cemented the idea that Macaulay Culkin didn't care about Hollywood's approval anymore. So while the world moved on, Culkin quietly reshaped how he existed in pop culture. He wasn't aiming to dominate charts, box office numbers, or Instagram feeds. Instead, he was operating in these little pockets of influence. A podcast here, a niche website there, a voice role for an indie project. For anyone trying to follow him, it felt like trying to catch smoke. You'd see glimpses, but nothing concrete, nothing predictable. By the time 2020 rolled around, most people had long stopped asking about Macaulay Culkin. He was that name you remembered from reruns, the kid from Home Alone, and maybe that bizarre pizza band a few years back. But suddenly, he started showing up again, not with a roar, but with small, precise moves that reminded people he hadn't disappeared entirely. It started with some acting work that didn't scream child star comeback. In 2021, he appeared in American Horror Story, double feature, a role that was short, sharp, and entirely un-Hollywood. Nobody was writing think pieces about his return to glory. He wasn't trying to reclaim old fame. He was just working quietly on projects that interested him. And honestly, that was the message. He could act, he could appear on screen, but he wasn't desperate for approval. Then in 2022, Culkin did voice work for Intergalactic, an animated series that had its own small but dedicated audience. Again, it wasn't a headline-grabbing move. It wasn't a red carpet moment. It was a clear signal. Macaulay Culkin was still in the game, but the game was on his terms. He wasn't chasing money, prestige, or nostalgia points. He picked projects that struck a chord with him, even if the mainstream didn't notice right away. In December 2023, he got a Hollywood Walk of Fame star. It was long overdue, but the ceremony itself was telling. Catherine O'Hara, the actress who played his mom in Home Alone, spoke warmly about their years working together. It wasn't flashy. There was no desperate PR spin. It was just acknowledgement. Yes, he mattered. And yes, the work he did as a kid still had cultural weight. That's it. No overblown comeback narrative, no nostalgic exploitation, just recognition. What this made clear is something people often forget about Macaulay Culkin. He never needed to chase relevance. He dipped back in, took projects that interested him, and didn't play the Hollywood publicity game. In recent times, Macaulay Culkin had made it clear he's technically retired. And when he says technically, he really means it. He's not chasing roles, he's not hustling for fame, and he's not trying to remind anyone that he still exists in Hollywood. He takes projects that genuinely catch his interest, the kind of work that sparks curiosity or makes him think, yeah, I can do this and it'll be fun. That's it. No pressure, no constant visibility, no chasing trends. Just selective creativity on his own terms. Even so, Culkin isn't completely off the map. In January 2026, he made a notable return to the Golden Globes, 35 years after he was first nominated for Home Alone. He presented the award for Best Screenplay Motion Picture, cracking jokes about being seen outside the holiday season and earning warm applause from the audience.
Wow. Thanks, guys. It's been 35 years since I've been to the Globes. Yeah. Thanks for welcoming me back. That's really nice of you guys. Yeah. I know it's weird seeing me outside the holiday season, but shockingly, I do exist all year round. I promise you.
It was a reminder that he still commands respect, even decades after the kid who once ran through booby-trapped houses. Beyond the occasional project or public appearance, Culkin's life today is rooted in balance. He's focused on his family life with fiancée, Brenda Song, and their children, embracing the quieter, more personal moments that the world rarely sees. There's no constant media circus, no need to prove anything, just home, not alone, family, and the life he chooses to live. And yet, he hasn't closed the door entirely on his past. Culkin has openly discussed ideas for a potential Home Alone return, pitching a concept where Kevin McAllister is an adult father, clever, nostalgic, but not forced. It's the perfect example of his approach. He'll revisit the past, but only if the story is meaningful, interesting, and worth his time. In a way, this phase of his life is the culmination of everything he's been doing since stepping away as a teenager. From selective acting to quirky side projects, from satirical podcasts to cult music experiments, he's built a life defined not by the spotlight, but by choice. Creativity, family, and legacy take precedence over constant visibility. It's a reminder that success isn't only about fame or money. It's about control, authenticity, and knowing what matters most. So here's to Macaulay Culkin, the child star who became an enigma, the actor who disappeared, reinvented himself, and returned on his own terms. He's still in the conversation, but now he controls the conversation, proving that you can be loved, respected, and remembered without needing to be everywhere all the time. His journey is fascinating, unpredictable, and inspiring, a rare Hollywood story with an ending that's still being written, and one that reminds us fame isn't everything. So, what do you think about Macaulay Culkin's life today? Would you watch a grown-up Home Alone with him back in it? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, give us a like if you learned something new, share this video with a friend who remembers the old Macaulay, and don't forget to subscribe to Near Uncommon for more stories like this. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.